Hi, Lindsey is with Chapman University, and she is the estate and gifts planner. Or what is your proper title, Lindsey?
Associate Director for Legacy Planning.
Associate Director for Legacy Planning. And we are not going to introduce you with an ask first form because you don't work on commission. Is that correct?
Correct. Chapman pays me a salary. I don't get commission for gifts I bring in, and you can't hire me to do something for you.
Yeah, but we can ask you to do things for us, right?
Right. I would be happy, we're going to go over a lot of types of gifts, and I can do illustrations for those, which I am happy to do for anyone who is watching this. That's just a service we provide, whether the gift goes to Chapman or not. If you just want to see how it could work for you, that is a thing I will do at no
Yeah,
cost.
yeah, and doesn't matter on the charitable organization that you want to benefit. Lindsey has what's called crescendo software, and some of the things that you're going to see on the screen with gift illustrations, she could provide you personally by email. And you don't even have to talk to her if you don't want to, but she'll guide you through and help you out. This is not a pressure situation that you that somehow you have to make a gift or that somehow you're obligated to do so. By the way, Chapman would love a donation from you, so don't educate.
I'll take
Yes,
it.
education is really important. So, where did you go to school, Lindsey?
Chapman University.
And and how long have you been doing this as a plan giving person for Chapman?
10 years last
10
month.
years. Okay. So you
Yeah.
got some experience, you know the college, you love it. So today you're going to be talking about charitable opportunities. And
Mhm.
why do you think the presentation today is kind of unique and important for people to hear?
So I'm going to throw up my slides real quick um, because that answer is on this first slide.
There
It's
you
the
go.
secrets your advisors rarely tell you.
What
So,
is that?
so advisors sometimes don't know about these charitable opportunities. They're not as aware of them, or if they're aware of them, they're not as comfortable talking about them. So they may not mention it. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And the reality is some advisors won't mention it because it does take money out of the portfolio and that can lose them money. So, but the advisors who do know about these love them. And so I do know a number of people. I used to say the secrets your advisors never tell you, but I work with people who do in fact talk about these gifts. So I felt like I was being a little unfair with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but the good thing about this particular session is that some of the things that people will learn, whether they do it themselves or at least it gets the conversation started, amongst their friends and neighbors, family members, saying, wow, I didn't realize that giving monies to charity means that I can have an income for life. Or, wow, I didn't know that charitable deduction was that high. Or, it gets that conversation going because as soon as you say the word charity to people, I mean, sometimes they just shut down, that giving money away, what a concept.
right. And we always hope that if people are taking advantage of these, that they do in fact get joy from that charitable portion of it, because you want charity to be something that feels good. And the fact is we also have interesting ways to give that can give back to the person as well.
Yeah,
So
we don't talk much about this, but university studies and case studies show that people who make a charitable gift or a gift either to the family members or to a cause live longer, are happier, more well-adjusted folks. And we see this as well with individuals who do a gift annuity who live
They
over
live forever.
forever.
Not forever, but
No, but definitely over
they
100.
do. They tend to hold out. It's
Yeah.
always
No,
impressive.
good.
So
Your bio is on our website. Let's
Mhm.
get started in the program. I love today's session.
Absolutely. So, as Pete mentioned, I've been doing this 10 years with Chapman. I am a certified specialist in plan giving, which means I specifically did classes to learn about these types of gifts. But I'm not an estate attorney. I am not a financial advisor. So I can tell you about the tools that you have in your kit. And then I'm always going to encourage you to talk to your own advisors to see what really fits with you. So welcome to Charitable Opportunities, the secrets your advisors rarely tell you. And I always like to start by reminding you it's important to know your tax bracket. I know Pete goes over it, but these are the tax brackets, and knowing where you land in that helps with your planning. So it's just a little reminder of everything Pete's already telling you. Know your bracket.
So, and this is what's called the your adjusted income tax bracket, so that once you take your deductions from your gross income, this is what's going to be taxable to you if you fall into these categories. And why are they important to know?
Well,
You
because it helps you plan. I
know,
was like, you
you
need
want to
to
know
know where
what the
you're going to
benefits
land.
are that when you
Right.
when you make a gift.
Exactly. Are you taking a deduction, or do you just do the standard deduction? Because there are ways to be charitable and have tax benefits even if you take the standard deduction, which we're going to talk about.
You got it.
Yeah. So the estate and gift tax in 2024, the exemption is a little over 13 million, and that is per person. So spouses have double that. And if you have a taxable estate, any of the charitable sponsors would love to take you to lunch to talk about how we can help. This does sunset at the end of next year, though. And so as far as we know, because my crystal ball somehow doesn't work with the federal government, it will revert back to the 5 million it was, plus whatever that inflation that they decide is over the time that it has been increased. So it is just something to be aware of. Estate taxes are 40%. The rate of whatever is above that exemption, it's being taxed at 40%. So it is something that is going to hit the state a little harder. Maybe not you personally, because you probably won't be there to see it, but your family will appreciate any planning you can do that saves them from this. There is something called a gift tax annual exclusion. Right now it's $18,000. That means it's to a person, it's not a charity, but you can give $18,000 from you to as many people as you want and never have to claim it. If you give
Yeah.
$18,001, that $1 needs to be claimed against your estate tax exemption.
Yeah.
So
Doesn't mean you owe any taxes. It just needs to be, you need to file the form.
correct. You file the form and they say, okay, you now have 13,610 minus $1, or whatever it is. And this is a great way to just, my grandfather did this to his grandkids. He used the gift tax exclusion to give us our gifts and help us plan ahead and invest money. So it's just something to know about. And of course, you want to be aware of long-term capital gains and qualified dividends. It can be 0, it can be 15%, it can be 20%. It depends. Again, this is why you want to know where you fall in your tax bracket. And just being aware of additional taxes. Medicare, you can go to their website. It gets real complicated, so I don't put it on the slide. And California's top tax rate actually increased this year to 14.4%. For taxable income above $1 million for an individual and almost 1.2 million for a married couple filing jointly. So that's just, again, a reminder, taxes are a factor, and don't forget about them as you plan out your year and your charitable giving. The Secure Acts have changed things up a little bit. So in January of 2020, the first Secure Act was passed, and then January of 2023, the second one went into effect. The RMD age increased to 72 in 2020. It is now 73, and in 2033, it's going to be 75. So when you have to take that required minimum distribution, which you definitely want to take because it's pretty taxable if you don't, it's shifting. So it's just good to know about those ages. And the Secure Act eliminated the stretch IRA, which is what made inheriting retirement accounts really wonderful. And now people have to take it within 10 years. And that affects their taxes, the person who inherits it, of course. And so that's one of the things that as we've been engaging in conversations with people who want to create a legacy gift for Chapman, this is something we bring up that, and I'm going to have a slide about why who gets what matters. But we talk to people about how their IRA has now become a more taxable inheritance, and there are ways to be charitable with the IRA and then maybe give the kids or other heirs things in different ways.
Yeah, just put a little check mark in your brain and say, if you want to stretch out your IRA over your lifetime, think charitable remainder trust. And we'll go into some more detail on that in a little bit. But these other two things are, especially the annuity. Talk a little bit about those.
So with Secure Act 2.0, we are now able to do something that has never been allowed before. So we're going to talk about what a charitable gift annuity is, but basically you make a gift and you get an income for the rest of your life. And before, we could never use a qualified charitable distribution or an IRA rollover to do that because the government said, but I'm not getting enough money in taxes. And we are now able to do that. It is a one-time thing. It is currently $53,000 within a year. And it can fulfill your RMD. You get that life income stream. So I do have more on that. It will continue to change. So you want to pay attention. If you only get to do this once in your lifetime, make sure you're planning that.
Before you had to wait until you died and you had to do it testamentary. Today, you can do it while you're breathing and can qualify for your RMD. And it's just pretty amazing that they can do it. It's too small amount to consider a charitable trust, but I
wouldn't recommend it at 53,000. Even if both spouses did it, it's still feels more like a gift annuity to me.
Maybe that'll change in the near future.
We'll see. Yeah. So how can charitable partners like Chapman, like Ronald McDonald House, how can we help you? We can help avoid capital gains tax, get an income tax deduction. That income that we talked about for a life or two lives, or sometimes even more lives. Reduce your taxable estate. As we talked about, 40% of whatever's over that estate tax exemption is taxable. That's a large amount.
The number 3, Lindsey, receive a variable or fixed income for life for one or more individuals. That's the part that confuses people when you use the words charity, because they don't understand how you can get income by giving your money away. And so we're going to go through that.
We're going to talk about it.
I wanted to focus in on that because when you give money, when you give $1, it doesn't cost you $1.
Right. Right. So
it's a little bit of a mind thing,
we'll get to it. Obviously transferring wealth to family if that's important to you, and future savings on income taxes sometimes. So charitable partners can provide a number of solutions to again, plan ahead and get a charitable partner.
I like your definition of a partner, because many people think that when a charity does one of these gift planning things that they exclude the children, or they don't involve both spouses, or there's something clandestine about it. No, this is totally open, follows the IRS code. I would imagine that you encourage the children to get involved in their parents' giving.
I love when families share philanthropy. I mean, that's what I had growing up. And I just think it makes it extra special because it's not only a person's legacy, but it's their family's
Family
legacy too. And
legacy, yeah,
you want their family to be supportive and to get joy from that as well.
yeah.
Um,
Make it a
so it's not
family
either
affair.
or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Um,
most people give cash. Why is that the worst way to give?
well, it's not the worst. It depends on what you need.
Yeah,
And um, there can be ways to give that provide more benefits. For
yeah. I
example,
think
when you have,
I like the
right,
way you said it.
yes, yes. I mean, writing a check is wonderful. And if you have appreciated stock, you can make that gift, avoid the taxes on that appreciation, get the same deduction you would have if you'd written a check for how much you gave in stock, and it gives you more tax savings. So it's just, again, it's something to know about and talk about with advisors. Um, you know,
Lindsay, let's say
yes.
I own Apple stock.
Hmm.
Can I just call my broker and say I want one share of Apple stock to go to Chapman University?
Absolutely.
Isn't that? And so if I bought the stock at $10, it's now worth $1,000. I avoid the capital gain.
Which would be a lot.
What do I get to? Do I have to deduct the $10 that I paid for it?
No, you get the full deduction for the amount that the stock is valued at the date it's received.
Wow.
So if it's $1,000 on that day, that's the deduction you get from that gift.
Can I do a share a mutual fund the same way?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and my broker can handle that.
Right. Chapman, we have something that we just send you. We say, here's all the information, give it to your person. They send it to us. And I would imagine other charities, same thing. Here's how they get it to us, and you send that to your broker. That's what I do. I call up my Edward Jones person and I say, here's how I want to give this year. And
Yeah.
she
But
does it, and I don't have to touch it.
most individuals give cash, and they don't even think about doing a mutual fund share or a stock, as one or two stocks.
Right.
Talk about the private business interest.
So I personally don't deal with this as much, but it is something to be aware of. If you're at that point where you're planning that much in depth, talking to an advisor about how to gift private business interests is something to just have on your radar. And then of course, real estate, if you we're
Rental
going to talk about
properties.
tenants and toilets later.
Yeah, rental
But real estate can
property.
make a wonderful gift.
Before you sell rental property, run the numbers for using a charitable organization. It's absolutely awesome because you can continue to get the income, get the charitable deduction, and you're doing something absolutely wonderful.
And if you own a home in California, it's probably appreciated quite a bit in the last few years.
Yeah.
Gifts in kind, art, jewelry, collectibles. I will say, I always like to remind people, different organizations have gift policies. And so some may not want your gift in kind because it just doesn't quite fit with their mission and how they're able to do it. So those are things you can give. You just need to chat about it with the organization first to make sure it's something they can accept. And then life insurance policies can make a wonderful gift. Before we get into more of the legacy, I do like to talk about donor advised funds. I think that they are a wonderful way to give, and especially to get that family giving going, because it's a great way to teach your kids, your family, how to be charitable. So
yeah, we're not born with a philanthropic gene, In fact, probably, I was brought up in my family that you don't spend money unwisely, and you got to keep your money close to your vest. And so to learn how to give is the real, you have to be taught how to do it, or you have to self-teach yourself. It doesn't become, it's not a natural thing, at least for
Right.
some of us.
Not for everyone.
Yeah.
And but I do think that I think everyone can find joy in giving if they find what it is for them personally.
Yeah.
So with a donor advised fund, which you can do, I mean, there's Fidelity, there's, there's community foundations, a bunch of places can do donor advised funds, and you put your money in and then you give it out when you want to. This is a great solution if you want to get a charitable deduction, and you usually take the standard. You could in 1 year make a large gift to a DAF, and then over the next 5 years you can give out from there. So you get a charitable deduction 1 year, that's the year you itemize, and then over the next 5 years you just take
money
the
to
standard.
charity. Yeah, it's almost like having your private foundation.
Yes,
I've had
with
families set donor advisors up for their kids. It gives them a lot of influence in the community, because
yes.
people want to really talk to them.
Yeah, and the only reason it's called donor advised really is they're gonna give it to where you want it to go, as long as it's an actual 501c3.
501c3.
Because the nice thing is that they will come back to you and say, I know you really wanted to give it to Puppies Inc., but they're not actually a charitable organization, and you don't want to think you're being charitable when you're not.
Yeah.
So that's where they come in with a little bit of oversight to make sure that it's actually going to a charitable organization. And it's a great way. I know families who, this year, this kid gets to pick where it goes, and next year. And so it also helps teach where your philanthropic passions lie.
Yeah.
Are you excited about education?
Yeah.
What is it? So this is wonderful.
Yeah.
Aristotle
said that giving money away is one of the most difficult things to do with money. But another way to use the donor advised fund is that in your trust, you're not sure or 100% sure as to where you want to, you think kind of where you want to make the gifts, but you're not 100% sure of that. So what you can do is give the monies to your own donor advised fund, and then later on leave a memo and say, upon my death, I want the advisor on the fund to give it to the following charities. And what it prevents you from having to do is redo your estate plan if you change your mind on a particular charity. So you could use it that way as well.
Yes. And I would say if you have a donor advised fund, make sure you have a plan for what happens to it after your lifetime. Are the kids going to take it over? Great. Are they not interested? Make sure that you've listed what charities you want to get those funds, so or that can be a wonderful way to give as well.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide.
Yes. So I talked earlier about a qualified charitable distribution, also known as an IRA rollover. This is a great way to give. If you're 70 and a half or older, because they didn't change the age when they changed the age for RMD, I don't know why, and you have an IRA, you can avoid taxes on transfers of up to $100,000 directly. It has to go from your IRA to the charity. Now that doesn't have to be 100,000. It's just, you can go up to that. So it could be 1,000 here, 1,000 there, and it can satisfy part of your RMD, all of it, depending on how high your RMD is. So if you don't feel like you need that money, you can be charitable with it. Now you don't get a tax deduction, but what you do get to do is not claim the income. And for those who take the standard deduction, or even those who don't, sometimes having a lower income is more beneficial to them when they're looking at taxes, than even the charitable deduction. So it's something to know about.
Well, if you're 70 and a half and you give monies to charity, you slam dunk, take it out of your IRA. because it meets the required minimum distribution. You don't have to report it as income, which could reduce your Social Security as far as taxes that you pay on Social Security.
Mhm.
It could reduce your Medicare co-payments. So if you're making a charitable donation and you're 70 and a half, man, take it out of your IRA. It's the best way to do it.
It's a great way to give. And if you still like, because some people, I have really great relationships with my donors. They like sitting down, talking to me, handing me a check. You can have your administrator make out a check. It has to say it's to Chapman University or whatever the charity is. It can't be to you because then it's your income. But if it says Chapman University, you can still go, let them take you out to lunch, hand over the check, and it's still an IRA rollover. It's your administrator will know it as a QCD, though. Just letting you know. The official term is IRA rollover. Nobody uses it. They use QCD. So I'm just letting you know about that. So it's a wonderful way to give. And I love giving people tools for their charitable tool belts. You can donate life insurance. It can be an existing policy that you don't need. So you name a nonprofit as the beneficiary. You can transfer the ownership to the nonprofit, which means you get a tax deduction for the cash surrender value of what you've transferred. Or you can create a new policy, name the nonprofit as owner and beneficiary. And then when you make your gifts every year to the organization to pay the premium, you get a tax deduction for each one of those. So really, life insurance is also a wonderful way to give, and sometimes to give a larger gift than you thought was possible. So again, just a great tool to have. The most common way that people give is through a will or a living trust. It's called a bequest. And while that is wonderful and we will take it, this is one of those things that with that Secure Act, I tap people on the shoulder and remind them that sometimes it's better to put the heirs in the trust and the charity as the beneficiary of the IRA. That said, this is a wonderful way to give. You can give a specific dollar amount, you can give a specific item, you can give a percentage. I always remind people that 5% of zero, if you blow through all of your income in your lifetime, is zero and you're okay. So a percentage is something to think about, because that way you're not concerned with, am I going to have the $100,000 I promised when I die? That percentage will be based on whatever you still have, right, Pete?
Yep.
It can reduce the value of your estate. So if you are gonna, have estate taxes, you can even write in, hey, any dollar above my exemption goes to this charity or these charities in these amounts, percentages. And that way you've been charitable and you've avoided those estate taxes.
And beyond the fact of giving money, it tells your family and the world and you what is important to you. I think passing on that value is through a charitable organization is really important, because your will and your trust and all your legal documents says very little about what you believe in, what you hold dear to your heart. And by naming a mission by naming a mission in your trust agreement, it tells a lot about you.
And I strongly recommend talking about it with your family and telling them why, because I think that's inspirational for them. And it also can avoid them feeling like this came out of nowhere. If you're not prepared to have that conversation, because it can be a difficult one to have sometimes, write a letter. Hey, I included Chapman in the plan because that's where I met your mom and you wouldn't exist. Something like that, so that they understand why it's special to you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Having that personal letter, being a professional fiduciary, I get the question a lot of times, did my mom or dad leave me anything in writing? And
Yeah.
almost 90% of the time I have to say, no, they didn't. So having a letter saying I love you and is just a wonderful thing to consider.
Yeah. You can donate retirement assets after your lifetime. You can just name a charity. Anywhere you have that beneficiary designation form, you can put a charity into that for a percentage, for the entire amount, whatever you feel is appropriate for you. That includes stocks, bank accounts, life insurance policies, as we talked about, IRAs, 401k, 403b, savings bonds, commercial annuities. You can name us the beneficiary and we're not going to pay taxes on that. That's the wonderful thing. That's why who gets what matters. Charities don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. So just knowing what you have and how you want to distribute that is really, really important. It's called income in respect of a decedent. So just know that that's the term. Continuing on. This is that slide I wanted to get to. So the example here, it's a $2.5 million estate, 1.5 million in the IRA and a $1 million house. If you give the IRA to the kids, because you're like, yes, I want them to have more, $1.5 million. That's so wonderful. But look at the taxes that they're gonna pay. So the charity gets the $1 million of the house. Fantastic. The kids ended up with $745,000 versus give the IRA to charity, full 1.5 million. We're not going to pay taxes on it. You give the house to the kids, they get that step up in basis. They sell it for $1 million. Both the kids and the charity got more. It's more of an impact. So again, look at what you have and not just how much you want to give, but how much is going to be left at the end of things. Not everybody thinks about that.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I'm leaving 40% of my estate to financial and estate literacy through a donor advised fund. And I don't know what my IRA account is going to be valued at. So what I've done is that named a charity in my trust, in my IRA accounts as a beneficiary designation. And then in my living trust, I have stated that if my IRA accounts or my retirement plans don't equal 40% of my estate value, then make it up from the trust. And so you can coordinate the two, because exactly from this slide, people do exactly the opposite. They include the house to the children because they see the number. Oh, we want them to give more to the children, the 1.5, but they don't realize is that the tax impact on those IRA accounts really reduce the bottom line to the kids.
Yeah. And again, they have to take it in 10 years now. That makes a difference. An extra, if it's a 1.5 and they have to take $150,000 a year for 10 years to deplete that, that's going to change what your taxes look like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important. And why am I not surprised that Pete has everything planned out really well? Of course he does. This is that exciting gift that we were talking about, the charitable gift annuity. So I know you've heard about commercial annuities. This is not the same thing. I want to clarify: a charitable gift annuity, not a commercial annuity. It's a simple agreement. I think it's 2 pages of an agreement between you and a charity. And if you want to benefit more than one charity, you could do it with like a community foundation and tell them how to distribute that. No lawyers, no fees. The rate is based on the age you are when you create it, and that rate will hold for the rest of your life. I'm going to show you the rates on the next slide, and you're going to see how great this is. There's an immediate income tax deduction. You don't get the deduction for the entire amount because some of it is coming back to you in those payments. You get that secure lifetime income stream for you, or you and a spouse, or for your friend. And a portion of the income is tax exempt because there is a charitable aspect to it. These are the rates. They just changed in January. The American Council on Gift Annuities looks at actuarial tables and does all kinds of work that I don't want to have to do and comes up with these rates. I'd say 95% of charities follow these rates and don't play around because we're not trying to compete based on rates. You know, we want it to be based on mission. The payment never changes for your lifetime. If you are 80 years old, that is a guaranteed 8.1% for life. I mean, if you're older than 90, it's 10.1% every year. You can get it quarterly, monthly, you can decide how often you want to get that. So yeah, and there are ways to do it where you defer it. You say, I'm going to make this gift. Let's say you got a major bonus and you know you want that to go into a gift annuity, but you don't need the payments yet. You can do a deferred gift annuity. You'll get the payments later. You decide when that is, but you get the tax deduction now. So it's a great planning tool. Here's an illustration. Let's say it's funded with cash. You could do appreciated securities. Some organizations will do real estate. Chapman won't, but it is out there as an option. This is for Larry and Sally Sample. I got real creative there, who are 78 and 76. So the rate for them is going to be lower because it's 2 lifetimes. And all of this, as Pete said, I have software. I put in ages. I put in the amounts. It gives me this. The human error is taken out of it because I double check what I've typed in every time. 6.5% annuity for 2 lives. The tax-free amount of that annual, so the annual amount they're getting back is $1,600. Basically, the tax-free amount of that is $1,000. That means they're only paying taxes on basically 600 of it. They get a tax deduction of $8,888. I did not plan that. That's just what came out. What a great tax deduction. Again, it's not for the whole amount because you are getting some of it back in those payments. And then we approximate that the charity is going to get about half of what went in because there is income coming out, but it's being invested and stewarded well. So you've made a wonderful gift to the charity. You can choose what you want it to support. You've created a secure income for yourself.
But look at the effective payout
wins.
rate. The effective payout rate, 16.1%. I mean,
and that's when you take into account, you know, the taxes that aren't being paid because some of it is tax-free. So the payout rate enough is exciting, but when you look at what effectively it would be, it gets even more exciting.
yeah.
So yeah, this is that new option we talked about. You can now use that qualified charitable distribution up to $53,000 again, once in your lifetime. So if you want a higher rate, you might want to wait a couple years till you're a little older, because again, it's based on your age. But you can fund a gift annuity. It reduces your RMD that year, creates that lifetime income stream, and it makes a charitable gift. I will say that you don't get a tax deduction because then you're not, you know, that's too much tax savings for the government. They can't quite stomach that. So there's no tax deduction and the payments are fully taxable, but they're spread out. Instead of taking that $53,000 and paying taxes on it in 1 year, you've created this and you're getting taxed bit by bit over your lifetime. This is something you can't do for someone else. So earlier I said, oh, maybe you do it for a friend. This has to be you or you and your spouse. If you do it through the IRA.
This is brand new, isn't it?
Yes, it went into effect, well, actually last January of 2023. So it's been around for a little bit.
Yeah. So most of your brokerage firms will not have a clue about this.
You'll probably want to use that charitable partner you're working with and
Yeah.
have them send you instructions to share, or even if you're comfortable with it, let them chat with your broker about how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I haven't heard about this, but can it be a deferred annuity, or does it have to be an immediate one? Or
It's immediate.
immediate, it has to be
Yeah.
immediate, okay. But
Yeah.
what a concept to
Yeah,
take out.
it's fantastic. For years, I would do this presentation and people would say, well, can I do it with the IRA rollover? And I would have to say, no, you can't. And I
Yeah.
get to say, yes, you can now. It's very
Yeah. And
exciting.
to lock in that rate for the rest of your life and not have it count toward, and have it count towards your RMD. So your adjusted gross income will be substantially lower.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
something to really consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Strategies, I talked about most of these. There's obviously the immediate annuity, means you start getting payments right away. The deferred annuity, which is, you want the tax deduction now, but you don't need the payments yet. You can defer it. And a higher payout rate is offered because you're going to be older when you start getting it. And then there's a testamentary annuity. So you make a plan that after your lifetime, either, from your IRA or from your trust, you create an annuity for someone else. This can be really great if lump sums are going to be hard for people to handle in terms of an inheritance. Sometimes people aren't as don't plan as far ahead as Pete does. And so this is a great way to have an inheritance without a lump sum. Pete, didn't you tell a story about someone who did this for her friend because she didn't want the husband to get the money?
Exactly. Yeah.
There are
Sisters.
lots of
Yeah. Sisters.
ways to use it.
She was afraid that the husband would overpower, and take the money and run if she just left it to her sister. And she gave it to her sister through a testamentary annuity. There also, what I've seen people do is that they have a caregiver that they've had for the
Mhm.
last 5 years, and she or he has been wonderful to them, and they want to show something of gratitude, and so they provide a gift annuity to them, and
Mhm.
and they get payments for the rest of their life, and then upon their death, then it goes to the charitable organization. It's like
Yeah.
two gifts in one, and they're usually very appreciative because they get a check once or
Right.
twice or 3 times a year. And
Right. Who do you think they're thinking about? It
yeah,
reminds them about how much they love you. So
yeah.
it's a great way to do things. It's something to know about. Again, tools for that tool belt. Um, So we're going to talk about a charitable remainder trust, which is going to sound a little like a gift annuity. There are nuances. A lot of the time, people create a CRT with an appreciated asset, like that rental home Pete was talking about, because they're trying to avoid taking all of those capital gains at once. So it does require an attorney. It is a trust. And please use an attorney who has worked with these, because if you get the language wrong in the trust, there can be tax consequences. So make sure that it's not just any attorney, that it is an attorney who knows how to draft a charitable remainder trust. You get to determine your payout rate. Minimum is 5%. You want to be careful with what percentage you pick, because depending, it could deplete the trust. So it's not guaranteed to be the same amount every year, the way a gift annuity is, if you do, depending on how you do the trust. So there's two ways you can do an annuity trust. It's going to be the same amount every year, but as the market shifts, that could mean there's less left over for charity at the end. And if being charitable is really important to you, that's something to consider. You can do a unit trust, which is every year they value it and they change your payment based on what the value of the trust is that year. The nice thing about that is if the market does great, your payments go up. If the market doesn't do great, your payments go down. So again, it's about what works for you. What risk are you willing to take on? It can pay to you for a term of years, for a lifetime, for your lifetime and your spouse's lifetime. This is where this is a little more flexible, to your kids after your lifetime. So there's more options with a charitable remainder trust.
Lindsey, and that's why somebody with your expertise is really needed and desired, because you can run on your computer software program various scenarios, and so that a person can get educated as to what kind of gift they want to, how they want to structure it, because there are so many options.
Lots of options. And so again, this avoids taking all those capital gains because if that appreciated asset goes into the trust and is sold in the trust, it is a charitable entity. You'll get them when you get your payments, but again, it's spread out.
Do you have a gift illustration?
I do.
There you go.
So let's say you have a property that's worth $1 million and you bought it for $200,000. $800,000 of capital gains is a lot. Let's say you do a 5% unit trust. You know you don't want to deplete it, so you want your payments to keep coming and hopefully grow, and you want to be really charitable at the end. Again, you get to pick this percentage. 5% is just for the sake of the illustration, and you do it for 2 lives for Jesse and Monica sample. Again, I'm very original. You give the asset, it's sold tax-free. You don't take all those capital gains. You bypass that gain. You save about $190,000 in taxes. The income tax deduction is $251,000, almost $252,000. So that's a lot. And you can carry this forward. If you don't need all that deduction in 1 year, you can carry it forward for 5 more years. The annual income, $50,000. We're assuming this was a rental property and they were making $30,000 on the rent prior. So they've increased their income. The estimated income is actually going to come out to be 2.5 million. They're estimating over a lifetime because it's being invested. It's growing, you hope. Again, if you have a much higher rate, you may deplete it a little faster, but it's a great way to do things. If it earns, and that's what, 6.38% and pays 5%, again, it's growing a little bit every year. After 2 lives, it comes to Chapman or Ronald McDonald House or both. With this, you can have more than one charity be the beneficiary at the end. And you get to know you did something really special and you get that wonderful income and the tax deduction. It's a great thing to know about. There's sort of an opposite thing. And again, this is more if you have a taxable estate where you take that asset, you put it in the trust, it pays to a charity for a term of years. It's called a charitable lead trust. Then the asset, it goes back to your family at the end without the taxes. So it's a way to pass along money to family or an asset to family. Again, if you're not going to pay estate taxes, this may not be the best for you, but it is something to know about. I mean, we were talking about this, Pete. Chapman has done one of these. You said you'd done one in your time as a fundraiser. It's not as common. It is something to know about.
Yeah. One of the things that we really encourage people to do is that if they have a highly appreciated asset and they're planning on selling that asset, is to run some numbers like a gift illustration. Let's say you have a rental property. Do I have to give 100% of the rental property to the charity in order for one of these things to work for me?
Oh, and you're thinking the charitable remainder trust, right? So no, you don't. I can run based on, partial sale, partial unit trust creation or charitable remainder trust creation. If you want to zero out taxes, I have a way to run that of like, how much can I get in cash, but then be charitable so that I don't pay taxes on this sale? There are options.
Yeah. We had an attendee in the Laguna Beach program, had some 2 rental properties, and he was tired of tenants and toilets, but didn't want to give up the income, and so they wanted to travel. So we figured out what would be his 0 tax, and he wanted cash out of the sale because they wanted to immediately begin traveling. And he got more monies from the charitable trust than he was getting from the rental property. He
Mhm.
got $200,000 in cash out, which they used to travel with. And he's still alive today, giving him income from the charitable trust. It was just these things have to be a win-win situation. If there's a loser here, then you don't do it. And everybody has to win. And on top of all of that, you have the good feelings of really donating something that money is going to be used for a great purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is an
So,
annuity lead trust?
yeah, well, this is the one I was just talking about. That was basically the opposite of the charitable remainder trust, where the charity gets it up front, then the family gets it at the end. And this is just an illustration. If the value is 10 million of whatever goes into the lead trust, and you do a 5% over 20 years, you know, the organization gets about $10 million. That's fantastic. And then the family, it's grown while it's in the trust, and the family gets 13 million and no taxes. So
I've recommended the lead trust to somebody who won a $500,000 in the lottery. We did
mm,
a $500,000 lead trust and didn't want to add that to his income.
right.
And so paid out to the charities until it zeroed out the tax, and then he got the 500,000 plus some principal growth, and it worked out
Right.
pretty well for him.
Yeah. So it's a tool to know
Yeah.
about and talk about with your advisors if you feel it's appropriate. There are some other smart giving options I want to talk about. You can live in your home and get a charitable deduction. It's called a retained life estate. And this is most charities will not do this if your home is your only asset, because we don't want to take that from you because it is a permanent agreement. That said, if you know that no one's going to want your home after you're gone, you can gift it to the charity during your lifetime. You get to continue living in it. You get a charitable deduction, which you can carry forward for 5 years. There are some charities that will do like a retained life estate gift annuity. Again, Chapman's not one of those, but you could potentially get paid to live in your house and then it goes to charity after your lifetime. It's just something to know about.
So can people live in their house and at the same time have it be a gift?
Yeah, yeah, that's what you're doing is you're basically upfront saying that the charity is getting the house. It does require an agreement between you and the charity. There are things to work out with it, but then you live in it for the rest of your lifetime. And then after your lifetime, the charity gets the home and most likely sells it and gets a wonderful gift. So it's something to know about. And there's also something called a bargain sale. So let's say you have, again, a home that you don't want, but you want some money, but you don't want to pay all kinds of taxes. And, similar to the charitable remainder trust option Pete said, this is called a bargain sale, where you sell it at a reduced price to the charity and you get a tax deduction for whatever that in between is. If it's worth $1 million and you sell it at 500,000, you get 500,000 in cash, you get a $500,000 tax deduction. So it's another thing to know about that. Just another way charities can be partners with you in your planning. Love about what I do is I get to work with people to create their legacy. And I think Pete would agree that that is an incredible honor. To be a part of those conversations and to become a part of someone's life in that way. And it's always bittersweet for me when a gift comes in, because it means somebody that I knew and appreciated so much is gone. And it means that I get to make their legacy come to life. And so that's wonderful. And I hope what you take away from this is not just ways that charities can be partners in your planning, but also partners in your legacy. A legacy gift is usually the largest gift a person gives. And I hope you'll tell the charity. I know it can feel really awkward sometimes, but what they can do, like we talked about, they can talk to you about assets. Who gets what? It matters. They can talk about what do you want to do with it. If I get a gift of $100,000 after your lifetime and all it says is I want it to support Chapman, that's lovely. But I don't know what you wanted to do with it. If you wanted it specifically for scholarships, it may not do that because I don't have those instructions. So if you talk to the charity, you can say, here's what I want it to do. You can talk about immediate use. You want it to immediately do something, or you want to create an endowment, which is a fund that goes on in perpetuity and gets invested and grows and things. So there are options. Do you want to talk about things you can name depending on the size of the gift? That's an option. But again, I can't ask you once it's in my hands because you're not around to ask. So I hope you'll tell the charities and let them work with you to make your legacy as meaningful as possible.
Yeah.
And let them thank you. That's one of the most fun things I get to do, is just share my gratitude, because in case you couldn't tell, I kind of love Chapman. 10 years of working here. I started as a student 19 years ago this fall. And it's just near and dear to my heart. And when it's near and dear to other people's hearts, it's so much fun to thank them for their generosity and for trusting us with their legacy. So call to action here, consider your legacy. What do you want it to be? Notify the nonprofit, ask for gift illustrations. You saw a couple of those. I can always run those for you. Most of the nonprofits will have software to run those for you. Let us say thank you, please, please, please. Discuss with your advisors. Again, I'm a certified specialist in planned giving, but I am not a financial advisor. I'm not an estate attorney. I can tell you about the tools. Your advisors are going to know which ones are best for your particular situation. And then if you can, inspire others by sharing what you've done, like Pete did. Half of mine is half of what I have is going to go to charity, because that's just important to me. And I think that sometimes we think we're bragging, but I think what it does is remind people what they're capable of as well. So with that, I'm open for questions. This is my contact information. And it's just always a pleasure to do this for you, Pete.
No, it's a complicated area, and you have to run the numbers. And the only way you can run the numbers is that by having a donor trust you enough that you're not there just to get the donation, that you're there to help them structure that gift so that they take advantage of the tax rules. And the tax rules are designed to encourage you to make these gifts. Because if you send the money to Washington, D.C., and then expect services to come back to the local community, it takes about 20, 30, 40% of the dollars to get back, just because of the administration and the bureaucracy. Whereas if you leave it to a social service, and I consider Chapman to be you're educating young people. That's a social desirable service. Ronald McDonald House, to have somebody be close to the child while they're going through a major surgery. That's a social service. We don't want the government involved in that. We can better use the monies locally, and you're in charge, because once you give your money in taxes, you don't have no control over it. As you know, it could go for anything. So this is the way it costs you a little bit to do that, but you can stay in charge of those tax dollars. There's an individual that I worked with who had 4 children, and they were married, and they wanted to make sure that their estate was zero when they died. And they planned their entire estate through charitable gift annuities. So there's lots of creative ways depending on what your goals and objectives are. And so I love your presentation, Lindsey. I think you're just absolutely on top of it. So thank you. Let me go
Thank
to the
you.
Q&A.